Hey, this is Chanel with For Real Women International, and I'm super excited to be back with you this week. In this week's edition, we're going to be talking about the concept of boundaries. When I looked at Webster's dictionary, it defined boundaries as a point or limit that indicates where two things become different. Words that are synonymous in meaning to the word boundaries are limits, borders, restrictions, and parameters. So, in essence, a boundary is really a mark or a limit or a standard that we set so that people can understand what our interests are and so that our interests and our alignments would be made clear. In essence, a boundary is saying no when we need to. Women, it is so important that we set boundaries or codes of ethics and standards of behavior that we live by. As a woman in leadership, it is particularly important that I set boundaries because this helps to protect my reputation and my credibility. Setting boundaries helps me to take control of and responsibility for my choices, my decisions, and my life. Boundary setting can be very difficult for many of us. I've been through it. And there's so many misconceptions that are associated with setting boundaries. And today I want to talk about 5 of those misconceptions. So the first misconception associated with setting boundaries is that setting a boundary means that I'm being selfish. Setting a boundary, in my opinion, has nothing to do with being selfish. As a matter of fact, it has a lot to do with protecting oneself and protecting others. Because I am no good to myself or anyone else if I'm stretching myself way too thin. And I've been there as a youth leader. I've been there as a woman in leadership. I've been there on the job. And sometimes it's very easy for us in the workplace to say yes, 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 because we want to be liked by others. We want to be viewed as the one that's the most resourceful or the one that's more helpful. But when we do those things and we don't set those boundaries or those limits as to how we are going to use our time and how we're going to use our energies, oftentimes people may abuse that. And within ourselves, we think, well, maybe I'm being a little bit selfish, or maybe I may burn a bridge in saying no to someone. Which takes me to our second point. And so, the second misconception associated with boundary setting is that if we set boundaries, we will burn bridges. People may never ask us to participate in an event or be part of a group because they fear that, we've set up this big parameter, we've set up this thing that, people can't ask us anything because we're just going to say no. And so, because we have that misconception, we keep on saying yes. But can I say something on this topic of burning bridges? I don't think no means that you're going to burn a bridge. I think it means that you're protecting yourself from actually being burnt out. And so it's crucial that we learn this. It's crucial that we purpose in our minds that once we say no, it's not that we're going to be saying no, 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 and saying it in a peevish manner. It's just that we are taking care of our interests and we're taking care of ourselves, because we can change our minds. Someone can ask us today, would you like to go somewhere with me? No, I'm so sorry, I'm not available to do it, but next week I'm available at this time. So our decisions can change. So setting boundaries is not going to burn a bridge, because no decision is ever really made in stone. We can always change our minds, and boundary setting does not define the direction we want to take for the rest of our lives. We can say yes sometimes, but know that we're not always going to be the yes, yes, yes person. We have to learn how to say no when we really mean no. And so the third misconception associated with setting boundaries is that setting a boundary means that we are unwilling to support others in their ministries. So I'm going to talk from in the context of Christian ministry. In Christian ministry, sometimes we are afraid to say no because we are fearful that others may perceive us saying no as us being unwilling to support their ministry, or that we have an unresponsive heart, or we are not compassionate, or we're not caring enough. That's why we say no. And because of this fear, we end up saying yes to things that we wouldn't otherwise say yes to because we don't want to disappoint people. And so boundary setting becomes difficult, I'm sorry, for a person who is like this because they're afraid of being viewed as not being Christian enough. And it's really sad. We have to learn to be willing to say no when it's something that doesn't really interest us. I believe that saying yes unwillingly is a sign of living in fallacy. You're not being true to who you are. You're not being true to yourself if you really don't want to participate in something, but you say yes because you are driven to do it for whatever reason. So learn how to set that boundary of no. And if you want to say yes and you're willing to do it, put your all into it. Go to bat for it. Put your all in all, your 100%. Pull out all of the stops. If you're going to say yes, do it with a willing heart. And I believe that it will be a complete blessing. The fourth misconception associated with setting boundaries is that when we set boundaries, we will lose friends. Yes, sometimes we can see who our real friends are when we say no to something. It's either we're fearful that we're going to be attacked or we're going to be abandoned. But can I say something to you? And I'll tell you why it's important that you set boundaries and why it's important that you say no to things that do not meet your code of ethics or do not live up to the standards of your calling in your life. So it's important for you to set this boundary because when you set that boundary and you say no to certain things, you really see the firm relationships and you really see the shaky and rocky relationships. And when a friendship is demolished as a result of you saying no, or a relationship is demolished as a result of you saying no to a person's request, this is clearly evidence that that relationship or that friendship was unhealthy and inauthentic. So learn how to say no and stick to your no's. Let your yeas be yeas and your no's be no's. And so the fifth misconception associated with boundary setting is that setting boundaries means that we are bad friends. And one of the fears attached with setting boundaries is that of hurting others. So when we say no to that family member who wants to borrow money or that friend who wants to borrow our car when we need it, we feel that saying no to that person will hurt them and will hurt the relationship. And in essence, it will make us become bad friends. But this is not the case at all. I believe that boundary setting is not a way to hurt someone. It's not a weapon used to injure them, but it's more of a defense mechanism or a defense tool. It's really used to protect us from losing a part of ourselves and to protect our interests. So don't be afraid to say no when you can't do something or you're not in the position to do something. It's not you hurting someone else. It's really you trying to protect your interests and protect yourself. Finally, we need to examine our reasons for setting boundaries and should not be fearful of saying no when we are not comfortable with being pressured into making certain decisions, going certain places, or participating in certain activities. You see, setting boundaries affirms our right to make our own decisions. And thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, we're going to do part 2 of our series on boundaries. And we're going to talk about how we can set boundaries in the workplace, set boundaries in relationships, set boundaries at home, and with our ministry lives as leaders. Thank you for tuning in. Put your comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.